Picture this, a diver, suspended in absolute silence. The surface, a rippling mirror of silver light, grows distant above. Below, there is only the endless blue. No sound but the rhythm of breath. No horizon but the gradient descent from azure to indigo to black. The ocean keeps its secrets in a language older than words. Down here, beneath the weight of 1,000 atmospheres, the world that once was lies waiting. Not in ruins alone, but in geological memory, written in sediment and stone. Every grain of sand that settles on the seafloor is a word in an epic we have forgotten how to read. We are taught that civilization began in river valleys Mesopotamia, the Nile, the Indus. We are taught that history is a progression, a ladder climbed rung by rung. But what if history is a spiral? What if, hidden beneath the waves, there are chapters torn from the beginning of our story? Atlantis is a name that echoes through time. It is the most famous of all lost worlds. A city, an empire, a dream. For more than 2,000 years, it has haunted the imagination of explorers, philosophers, mystics, and skeptics. Was it real? Was it allegory? Or was it something stranger, still a memory, passed down through generations, of a world that drowned? We are drawn to the idea of sunken cities because they speak to something fundamental in the human soul. They remind us that nothing lasts forever, that even the mightiest civilizations, with all their power and splendor, are fragile. They remind us that the earth itself is alive, restless, and capable of reclaiming everything we build. Tonight, we descend, not just into the ocean, but into time itself. We will follow the thread of Atlantis into the deep past, into the Ice Age, into flood myths and forgotten coastlines, into the silence beneath the waves where entire worlds lie sleeping. This is a story about loss, about memory, about the cities we built and the seas that swallowed them. This is a story about Atlantis and the other sunken worlds. The story begins in Athens, around 360 BC. An old man sits in the shade of an olive tree, speaking to his students. His name is Plato, and he is about to plant a seed that will grow into one of history's most enduring mysteries. In two of his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, Plato tells a tale so vivid, so detailed, that readers have spent millennia trying to decide whether he was recording history or inventing a parable. He describes a mighty island empire called Atlantis, located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the ancient name for the Strait of Gibraltar. This was a land of unimaginable wealth and power, ruled by kings descended from the god Poseidon himself. Plato describes Atlantis as an engineer's dream, concentric rings of water and land, connected by bridges and canals, with a central citadel gleaming with precious metals. The Atlanteans were advanced beyond measure masters of architecture, agriculture, and warfare. They commanded vast fleets and controlled territories across the known world. But then came the fall. According to Plato, the Atlanteans grew arrogant. They turned away from virtue and toward conquest, seeking to dominate even the free cities of Greece. The gods, watching from Olympus, were displeased. In a single day and night of earthquakes and floods, Atlantis was swallowed by the sea, disappearing without a trace. Was Plato describing a real place? He claimed the story came from his ancestor Solon, who heard it from Egyptian priests during a visit to the Temple of Sighs. These priests spoke of events 9,000 years before Plato's time, a timeline that would place Atlantis in the mists of prehistory. Around 9600 BCE, most scholars believe Atlantis was an allegory, a moral fable about hubris and the dangers of unchecked power. Plato was, after all, a philosopher, not a historian. He used stories to teach lessons, to provoke thought, to explore ideas about justice, governance, and the soul. And yet, what if the allegory was rooted in something real? What if Plato or Solon, or the Egyptian priests, was drawing on a collective memory of actual catastrophes? What if Atlantis was not one place, but a metaphor for many places, many civilizations, swept away by the rising seas at the end of the last ice age? The question lingers unanswered for over 2,000 years. And in that space between certainty and doubt, a legend is born. To understand Atlantis, we must first understand the world it may have come from, a world vastly different from our own. A world of ice and open plains, of coastlines now drowned, of peoples who left no written records, but whose lives shaped the course of human history. 20,000 years ago, the Earth was in the grip of the last glacial maximum. Ice sheets, miles thick, covered much of the northern hemisphere. So much water was locked in these frozen behemoths that global sea levels were PPROXIMATELY 120 meters, nearly 400 feet lower than they are today. This transformed the planet's geography in ways almost impossible to imagine. The Mediterranean Sea shrank. The Persian Gulf disappeared entirely, exposing a fertile river valley where the Tigris and Euphrates once merged. The Red Sea narrowed to a strait, and vast expanses of continental shelf, now hidden beneath the waves, were dry land habitable, temperate, and teeming with life. These lost landscapes were home to our ancestors. Hunter-gatherers followed herds across plains that are now submerged. They built camps on riverbanks that have been swallowed by the sea. They created art, told stories, developed technologies, and then as the climate warmed, the world began to vanish. Around 12,000 BCE, the ice started to melt. It was not a gradual process. There were periods of relative stability, punctuated by catastrophic pulses of warming. Meltwater Pulse 1A, which occurred around 14,600 years ago, saw sea levels rise as much as 18 meters 60 feet in just a few centuries. Coastlines retreated at speeds visible within a human lifetime. Communities were displaced. Migration routes were severed. Entire ecosystems drowned. This was the age before memory, or rather, the age whose memory survives only in fragments. In flood myths, in legends of lost lands, in the archaeological traces, we are only now beginning to recover from the ocean floor. Could Atlantis have been one of these drowned worlds? A coastal civilization, thriving on the exposed shelf, wiped out by the relentless rise of the sea? It is a tantalizing possibility, one that transforms Plato's allegory into something far more haunting. Because if Atlantis represents a memory of this age, then it is not a story about one city. It is a story about the whole world, and everything that was lost when the ice melted and the waters rose. The story of a great flood is almost universal. It appears in the myths and sacred texts of cultures separated by oceans and millennia. In ancient Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh tells of Utnapishtim, who survives a divine deluge by building an ark. In the Hebrew Bible, Noah does the same, saving his family and pairs of every animal from waters that cover the earth. The Greeks told of Deucalion and Pyrrha, sole survivors of a flood sent by Zeus. In India, the story is of Manu, warned by a fish to build a great boat before the world is drowned. Across the Pacific, indigenous peoples of the Americas have their own flood myths. The Hopi speak of emergence from a previous world destroyed by water. The Maya recount cycles of creation and destruction, each ending in catastrophe. In Australia, Aboriginal oral traditions preserve stories of rising seas swallowing coastal land, stories that align eerily well with geological evidence of post-glacial flooding. For centuries, these myths were dismissed as religious allegory or primitive superstition. But as our understanding of Earth's climate history deepens, a different interpretation emerges. What if these stories are not fantasy, but memory distorted by time, embellished by retelling, yet rooted in real events? The end of the last ice age was a period of profound climate upheaval. As the great ice sheets collapsed, meltwater surged into the oceans in episodic pulses. Meltwater Pulse 1A alone raised sea levels at an average rate of 40 to 60 millimeters per year fast enough for a single generation to witness dramatic changes to their world. Coastal communities would have been the first to feel the impact. River deltas would have expanded inland, turning freshwater estuaries brackish and saline. Low-lying islands would have disappeared. Hunting grounds and fishing camps, established for generations, would have been claimed by the advancing tide. For people living through such changes, the flood would not have seemed gradual. It would have felt apocalyptic, a divine punishment, a breaking of the world. And in oral cultures, where history is preserved through story, these events would become myths, tales of angry gods, righteous survivors, and lost paradises beneath the waves. Could Atlantis be one such myth, a distillation of countless local floods into a single, archetypal catastrophe? Could Plato's tale of a city destroyed in a day and a night reflect not one disaster, but the cumulative trauma of a species, forced to retreat inland as the seas reclaimed the world? If so, then Atlantis is not just a place. It is a symbol, a monument to the fragility of civilization and to the power of water to reshape the surface of the earth. Meanwhile, in the shimmering blue waters of the Aegean Sea, another candidate emerges from the depths of time. Around 1600 BCE, the volcanic island of Thera, known today as Santorini, erupted with a force that defies comprehension. This was one of the largest volcanic events in human history, comparable in scale to the eruption of Krakatoa in 1883. The island's center collapsed, creating a vast caldera that filled with seawater. Ash and pumice rained down across the eastern Mediterranean, blotting out the sun. Tsunamis, triggered by the sudden displacement of millions of tons of rock, raced across the Aegean, smashing into the northern coast of Crete. On Crete, the Minoan civilization, one of the most advanced cultures of the Bronze Age, was at its height. The Minoans were master shipbuilders, traders, and artists. Their palaces, like the sprawling complex at Knossos, were architectural marvels, adorned with vivid frescoes of dolphins, bulls, and dancing figures. They commanded a maritime network that stretched from Egypt to the shores of Anatolia. But the eruption of Thera dealt the Minoans a catastrophic blow. Coastal settlements were inundated by tsunamis. Ash fallout disrupted agriculture. Trade routes were severed. Within a generation, the Minoan civilization entered a steep decline, eventually giving way to the Mycenaean Greeks. In 1967, archaeologists on Santorini uncovered the ancient city of Akrotiri, buried beneath meters of volcanic ash. The preservation was extraordinary multi-story buildings, elaborate frescoes, sophisticated plumbing systems, all frozen in time, like a Bronze Age Pompeii. No bodies were found, suggesting the inhabitants had time to evacuate. But their city was lost forever, entombed in stone. Could this be Atlantis? The parallels are striking. An advanced island civilization, destroyed in a sudden catastrophe, leaving only ruins and memory. Even the timeline is suggestive. Plato's Atlantis, dated to around 9600 BCE, could be explained as a tenfold error in Egyptian record-keeping, placing the event around 1500 BC, precisely the era of Thera's destruction. Greek archaeologist Angelos Gallinopoulos championed this theory in the 1960s, arguing that Plato's Atlantis was inspired by garbled accounts of the Minoan collapse. The Egyptians, trading partners of the Minoans, would have witnessed the disruption firsthand. Over centuries, the story could have been conflated with older flood myths and transmitted to Solon. Yet questions remain. Plato placed Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic Ocean, not the Aegean. And Thera, though catastrophic, was a regional disaster, not a global one. The Minoan theory is compelling, but it is not definitive. Perhaps Atlantis is not one place, but an echo, a resonance of many lost cities, many disasters refracted through the prism of myth. Perhaps Santorini is one verse in a longer ballad sung in the voice of the sea. As the centuries turned, another mystery surfaced, this time not from the depths, but from the archives. In 1513, an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis compiled a world map, drawing on ancient sources, some of which, he claimed, dated back to the time of Alexander the Great. The map itself is a marvel of cartography, but what caught the attention of researchers in the 20th century was something far stranger. The Piri Reis map appears to show the coastline of Antarctica accurate in detail, and yet depicted without its ice cover. The same is true of the Orontius Phineas map, drawn in 1531, which portrays an Antarctic continent with rivers, mountains, and clearly defined coastal features. These maps predate the modern discovery of Antarctica by more than 3 centuries. How is this possible? Antarctica has been locked beneath ice for millions of years. Even if ancient mariners had reached the continent, a staggering proposition in itself, they would have found it encased in glaciers, not the temperate land shown on these charts. Some researchers, including the late Charles Hapgood, proposed a radical explanation. The maps were copied from far older sources, originating from a lost maritime civilization that existed before the last ice age, when Antarctica was still ice-free. Hapgood's theory suggests that this civilization possessed advanced knowledge of geography and navigation, mapping the world with precision that would not be matched again until the modern era. Mainstream scholars are skeptical. They argue that the maps are more likely products of speculation, artistic interpretation, or misidentification of coastlines. The resemblance to Antarctica, they suggest, is a coincidence, an artifact of how Renaissance cartographers attempted to fill in the blanks of unexplored regions. And yet, the maps persist as enigmas. They raise uncomfortable questions. What if there were societies, before recorded history, that navigated the oceans with skill and knowledge we have underestimated? What if the myth of Atlantis and other tales of lost lands are not fantasies, but faint echoes of a forgotten age? The ocean is vast, the past is deep, and between the lines on an old map, there may be truths we have yet to recognize. Now the narrative shifts eastward to the delta of the Nile and the turquoise waters of the Mediterranean. For centuries, historians knew of Thonis and Heracleion, 2 great port cities mentioned in ancient texts. Thonis was the gateway to Egypt, a bustling harbor where Greek merchants and Persian traders mingled. Heracleion was named for Hercules himself, said to have visited the city on his mythic journeys. Both cities thrived during the late period of ancient Egypt, serving as vital hubs of commerce and diplomacy. And then they vanished. Somewhere around the 8th century CE, both cities disappeared from the historical record. No ruins were found on land. No inscriptions marked their passing. It was as if the earth had swallowed them whole. In the year 2000, French underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudio and his team made a stunning discovery. 4 miles off the coast of Egypt, beneath 30 feet of murky water, they found the remains of Thonis Heracleion. The 2 cities, it turned out, were one and the same, known by different names to the Egyptians and Greeks. The sight was breathtaking. Massive statues of gods and pharaohs lay half buried in the sediment, their stone faces gazing up through the water. Temples, once resplendent with gold leaf and incense, now stood in silent ruin. Anchors, by the hundreds, littered the seabed, testament to the city's role as a maritime crossroads. Even the harbor's infrastructure remained intact: stone quays, canal systems, and the foundations of monumental buildings. What caused Thonis Heracleion to sink? Geological studies suggest a combination of factors: soil liquefaction, triggered by earthquakes, the gradual subsidence of the Nile Delta, and rising sea levels. Over time, the ground beneath the city became unstable. Buildings tilted, canals flooded, and eventually, the entire metropolis slipped beneath the waves. The loss was gradual, not instantaneous, no single catastrophe, but a slow surrender to the sea. And yet, for the people living through it, the effect would have been devastating. A city that once stood at the heart of the ancient world, reduced to legend, then to silence, and to ruins discovered only by divers with sonar and patience. Thonis Heracleion is not Atlantis, but it is an Atlantis, a city that fell, not to hubris or divine wrath, but to the relentless forces of geology and time. It is a reminder that the earth beneath our feet is never as solid as it seems, and that the sea is always waiting, patient and eternal, to reclaim what it has lost. Let us pause here, in the stillness between stories, and consider a question that threads through everything we have explored. What is memory? For humans, memory is fragile, a patchwork of impressions, easily distorted, quick to fade. We forget names, misremember dates, conflate one experience with another. Our sense of the past is, at best, an approximation. But the earth remembers differently. The earth remembers in stone, in sediment, in the layers of ice cores pulled from Greenland and Antarctica. Every volcanic eruption, every flood, every shift of the continental plates is recorded in the geological archive. The Earth's memory is vast, patient, and indifferent to the passage of millennia. Coral reefs grow upward, tracking the rise of sea levels. Sediment cores preserve pollen grains from forests that no longer exist. Fossilized shorelines mark the high water lines of ancient floods. The ocean floor itself is a palimpsest, a manuscript written and rewritten over millions of years, where every layer tells a story. When we dive into the ocean, we are not just exploring space. We are exploring time. Every meter of depth is a step backward into the past. The wrecks we find, ships, cities, entire landscapes, are memories made tangible, preserved in the cold embrace of salt water. And perhaps this is why Atlantis endures. Not because it was real, but because it symbolizes something deeper, our awareness that the world we know is temporary. That beneath the surface of the familiar, there are hidden depths, forgotten chapters, entire epics erased by time and water. The deep remembers. It remembers the coastlines that drowned, the forests that became swamps, the cities that sank. It remembers the people who walked on land that is now seafloor, who built homes on shores that no longer exist. We are only beginning to listen. The journey continues, eastward now, to the warm waters off the southern coast of Japan. In 1986, a dive instructor named Kiichiro Eredic was exploring the seafloor near Yonaguni, the westernmost island of the Ryukyu archipelago. What he found defied easy explanation. A massive, terraced structure rising from the depths, its surfaces covered in sharp angles, flat platforms, and what appeared to be carved steps. The Yonaguni monument, as it came to be known, is approximately 150 meters long, 40 meters wide, and rises about 27 meters from the ocean floor. Its most striking feature is a series of flat, stacked terraces, resembling a step pyramid. There are channels, grooves, and what some interpret as roads or pathways. The structure rests at a depth about 25 meters, shallow enough to have been above water during the Ice Age. Geologist Masaaki Kimura, who has studied the site for decades, argues passionately that the monument is artificial evidence of a lost civilization that flourished on the exposed land bridge connecting Japan to the Asian mainland. He points to tool marks, right angles, and symmetrical features that, he claims, could not have been produced by natural erosion alone. But other scientists are skeptical. Robert Schoch, a geologist from Boston University, visited the site and concluded that the Yonaguni monument is most likely a natural formation, the product of hot tectonic activity and marine erosion, acting on sandstone layers that naturally fracture along flat plains. The steps, he argues, are simply the result of differential weathering, where softer layers erode faster than harder ones, creating the illusion of human craftsmanship. The debate remains unresolved. Both sides marshal evidence, both cite peer-reviewed studies, and yet the mystery persists. What is undeniable is that Yonaguni stirs something in the imagination. It asks us to consider how much we do not know, how many structures might lie beneath the waves, misidentified, overlooked, or simply undiscovered. If Yonaguni is natural, it is a stunning example of geology's ability to mimic human design. If it is artificial, it would be among the oldest architectural sites on Earth, predating the pyramids of Egypt by thousands of years. Either way, it is a monument to the ocean's power to preserve and conceal, and to the human impulse to seek meaning in the shapes we find in stone. From Japan, the trail of submerged mysteries leads westward again, across the waters of the Indian Ocean, to the coast of Gujarat. In Hindu scripture, Dwarka is no mere city. It is sacred ground, the earthly realm of Lord Krishna, one of the most beloved deities in the Indian pantheon. The asterisk Mahabharata asterisk and the asterisk Bhagavata Purana asterisk describe Dwarka as a city of unimaginable splendor, built on land reclaimed from the sea by Krishna himself. According to legend, after Krishna's death, the ocean rose and swallowed Dwarka whole, leaving no trace behind. For centuries, this was considered pure mythology, a divine tale, not a historical account. But in the 1980s, underwater archaeologist S.R. Rao made a discovery that blurred the line between legend and fact. Off the coast of modern Dwarka, at depths of 10 to 40 meters, Rao and his team from India's National Institute of Oceanography found the submerged remains of an ancient settlement. Stone structures, walls, anchors, pottery shards, and even what appeared to be a fortified gateway emerged from the silt. Radiocarbon dating suggested the artifacts were between 3,500 and 9,000 years old, placing the earliest occupation in the twilight of the last ice age. The findings sparked intense debate. Supporters argued that the ruins validated the ancient texts, proving that Dwarka was not just a myth but a real city, submerged by rising seas or seismic activity. Critics countered that the structures could be natural formations, or the remains of a more recent settlement unrelated to Krishna's legendary realm. Further excavations in the 2000s reinforced the case for human habitation. Sonar imaging revealed large, symmetrical formations beneath the sediment. Divers recovered seals, sculptures, and inscribed tablets. In 2025, the Archaeological Survey of India announced renewed efforts to explore the site, using advanced underwater robotics and 3D mapping. Whether or not these ruins are Krishna's Dwarka, they are undeniably ancient. They speak to a time when the coastline of India looked vastly different, when sea levels were lower and land now submerged was dry and inhabited. They are a reminder that mythology and history are not always opposites, that stories passed down through generations can carry kernels of truth, waiting to be uncovered by science. Dwarka may not be Atlantis, but like Atlantis, it represents a city claimed by the sea, remembered in song and scripture, and now slowly revealing its secrets to those patient enough to search. Across the Atlantic, in the shallow turquoise waters of the Bahamas, another enigma awaits. The Bimini Road, discovered in 1968 near North Bimini Island, is a linear formation of limestone blocks stretching for nearly half a mile along the seafloor. The stones are large, rectangular, and eerily uniform, arranged in what appears to be a deliberate pattern. Some blocks show signs of tool marks. Others seem fitted together with precision. The discovery captured the imagination of alternative historians and New Age enthusiasts, particularly followers of Edgar Cayce, the famed American psychic. In the 1930s, Cayce predicted that remnants of Atlantis would be found near Bimini in 1968 or 1969, a prophecy that seemed vindicated when the road was discovered exactly on schedule. But mainstream archaeologists and geologists were quick to offer a more prosaic explanation. The Bimini Road, they argued, is a natural formation beach rock, a type of sedimentary rock that forms in coastal zones and fractures into rectangular shapes as it weathers. The alignment is simply the result of geological processes, not human engineering. Despite this, the debate continues. Some researchers point to anomalies, anchor stones found nearby, underwater caves with possible human artifacts, and sonar readings suggesting buried structures beneath the sand. Others remain unconvinced, insisting that the human mind's tendency toward pareidolia-seeing patterns where none exist is at work. What is undeniable is the allure of the site. Bimini lies in the Bahamas, part of a shallow platform that was exposed during the Ice Age. If any ancient maritime culture explored these waters, evidence of their presence could lie beneath the sand, waiting for the right tools and the right questions. Is the Bimini Road a remnant of Atlantis? Almost certainly not. But it is a reminder that the ocean guards its mysteries jealously, and that every stone on the seafloor has a story, whether written by human hands or by the patient, indifferent forces of nature. Step back now, farther than any single site or ruin. Step back to the threshold of prehistory, to the twilight era when the last ice age was ending and the world was being remade. Imagine a planet transformed. As glaciers retreated, entire ecosystems migrated poleward. Tundra gave way to forest. Grasslands bloomed where ice had stood, and the ever-present sea rose relentlessly, meter by meter, reclaiming the continental shelves. On these exposed shelves, there may have been thriving communities. Not cities in the modern sense, no skyscrapers or sprawling metropolises, but complex societies nonetheless. Fishing camps, trading networks, seafaring peoples who knew the currents and the stars, who navigated coastlines that no longer exist. This is the hypothesis of the world before the world, a speculative but increasingly plausible idea that challenges our traditional timeline of civilization. It suggests that before the rise of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley, there were maritime cultures that left few traces on land because their world was drowned. Evidence for such cultures is fragmentary but tantalizing. In the Gulf of Cambay, off India's west coast, sonar surveys have revealed geometric patterns on the seafloor, possible remnants of urban structures submerged for millennia. Doggerland, the vast landmass that once connected Britain to Europe, has yielded stone tools and fossilized bones from the North Sea, evidence of human habitation on land now lost. Sundaland, the drowned extension of Southeast Asia, may have been a cradle of human culture, its coastlines home to societies whose stories vanished with the rising tide. These discoveries are fragmentary, contested, and difficult to interpret. Underwater archaeology is expensive, technically challenging, and limited by visibility and access. But the more we look, the more we find. And the more we find, the clearer it becomes that our picture of the past is incomplete. Perhaps Atlantis is not a specific place, but a collective memory, a symbol of all the worlds that drowned when the ice melted. A monument to the forgotten, the displaced, the peoples who watched their lands disappear beneath the waves and carried the memory forward in story and song. The world before the world is still there, waiting. Beneath the blue veil, beneath the sediment and the silence, it lies sleeping. And we are only just beginning to wake it up. Let us turn now to one of the most thoroughly documented of all submerged lands, a place that was not myth, but lived reality for thousands of years. Doggerland was a vast, low-lying plain that connected Britain to mainland Europe during the last ice age. At its greatest extent, it covered an area roughly the size of the United Kingdom itself, stretching from the east coast of England to the shores of Denmark, the Netherlands, and Germany. It was not a barren wasteland far from it. Doggerland was a rich, temperate landscape of rivers, marshes, forests, and rolling hills, teeming with game and fish. For the Mesolithic hunter-gatherers who lived there, Doggerland was home. Archaeological evidence recovered from the North Sea stone tools, bone harpoons, the remains of mammoths, and aurochs paints a picture of a thriving population. These were skilled peoples, adapted to life in a dynamic environment where the line between land and water was always shifting. But as the climate warmed, Doggerland began to drown. Rising sea levels encroached from the south and east. Rivers became estuaries. Hills became islands. By around 6,500 BCE, Doggerland had been reduced to a narrow isthmus, a last bridge between Britain and Europe. And then, around 6,200 BCE, a catastrophic event delivered the final blow. A massive underwater landslide, known as the Storegga Slide, occurred off the coast of Norway, triggering a tsunami that raced across the North Sea. The waves struck the low-lying remnants of Doggerland with devastating force, inundating settlements, drowning forests, and severing the land connection once and for all. Britain became an island. The evidence for Doggerland is not speculative. Seismic surveys, sediment cores, and thousands of artifacts dredged up by fishing trawlers have allowed scientists to reconstruct the landscape in astonishing detail. Maps now show Doggerland's rivers, coastlines, and topography, a vanished world rendered visible through the lens of modern technology. Doggerland is not Atlantis, but it is an Atlantis, a real place, inhabited by real people, lost to the sea in a timescale recent enough to be remembered, at least in the collective unconscious of the cultures that descended from its refugees. And perhaps that is the deeper truth. Perhaps Atlantis is every Doggerland, every landscape swallowed by time, every home abandoned to the tide, every memory of a world that was. From the cold waters of the North Sea, the journey shifts to the warm, shallow seas of Southeast Asia, a region where the concept of a drowned continent is not myth, but geological fact. During the Ice Age, when sea levels were at their lowest, the Sunda Shelf, an enormous expanse of continental crust, was exposed, connecting the modern islands of Sumatra, Java, Borneo, and the Malay Peninsula into a single, continuous landmass. This region, known to scientists as Sunderland, was vast, nearly twice the size of India, and ecologically diverse, ranging from tropical rainforests to coastal plains. Sunderland was not empty. Genetic, linguistic, and archaeological evidence suggests that it was a major center of human habitation and cultural development. Some researchers propose that Sunderland was a cradle of agriculture, where rice cultivation may have first emerged. Others speculate that it was a maritime hub from which early seafarers spread eastward into the Pacific and westward into the Indian Ocean. As the ice melted, Sunderland drowned. Unlike Doggerland, whose submersion was rapid and dramatic, the flooding of Sunderland occurred over thousands of years, a slow, inexorable retreat inland as the Java Sea, the South China Sea, and the Strait of Malacca expanded to swallow the lowlands. The cultural impact would have been profound. Communities would have been forced to migrate inland into the highlands of Borneo, Sumatra, and mainland Southeast Asia. Coastal settlements would have been abandoned, then forgotten. Stories of lost lands, preserved in oral traditions, would have evolved into myth-stales of ancestors who lived in a land that no longer exists. Could these myths have contributed to the Atlantis legend? It is possible. Ancient sailors navigating the coasts of Asia could have heard tales of Sunderland from local peoples and carried them westward, where they merged with other flood myths and eventually reached the Mediterranean. Today, Sunderland lies beneath 50 to 100 meters of water. Its rivers, valleys, and coastlines are mapped through bathymetry, but its secrets remain largely unexplored. No major underwater excavations have been conducted. No sunken cities have been found yet, but the land is there, waiting. And as technology advances, as underwater archaeology becomes more sophisticated, it is only a matter of time before Sunderland begins to yield its stories. Now we enter the realm of catastrophe, of events so sudden and so violent that they shattered the world and left scars still visible today. Around 12,900 years ago, the Earth's climate underwent a dramatic and abrupt shift. After millennia of gradual warming, temperatures plummeted in a matter of decades, plunging the northern hemisphere back into near-glacial conditions. This event, known as the Younger Dryas, lasted for more than a millennium before warming resumed. What caused the Younger Dryas? For decades, the prevailing theory was that melting ice sheets disrupted ocean currents, particularly the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, triggering a feedback loop of cooling. But in recent years, a more dramatic hypothesis has gained traction. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, proposed by a team of scientists including Richard Firestone and Graham Hancock, suggests that a comet or asteroid airburst or multiple impacts struck the Earth around 12,900 years ago. The evidence includes a layer of sediment found at sites across North America, Europe, and the Middle East enriched with platinum, nanodiamonds, and spherules, microscopic beads of melted rock, consistent with extraterrestrial impact. The hypothesis is controversial. Critics argue that the evidence is ambiguous, that the markers could have non-impact origins, and that no definitive impact crater from this period has been identified. But proponents counter that an airburst similar to the Tunguska event of 1908 would leave no crater, and that the scale of the catastrophe is consistent with multiple impacts across a wide area. If the hypothesis is true, the consequences would have been apocalyptic. Wildfires would have raged across continents. Ice sheets, destabilized by the impacts, would have collapsed, releasing massive floods. The climate would have been thrown into chaos. And human populations already adapting to the end of the Ice Age would have faced a sudden, devastating blow. Could this be the origin of the Atlantis myth? Could Plato's single day and night of misfortune reflect a distant memory of this cataclysm? It is speculative, but not impossible. Oral traditions can preserve memories across millennia, especially when they are tied to trauma and loss. The fire from the sky is not proven, but it is plausible. And it reminds us that the Earth's history is punctuated by catastrophes, events that reshape the landscape, rewrite the story of life, and leave echoes in the myths we tell. As we near the end of this journey, a question emerges, one that has haunted researchers for decades. Could there have been a civilization before the civilizations we know? A culture now lost, whose knowledge and achievements were inherited by later peoples, by the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the builders of Göbekli Tepe and Stonehenge? The evidence is circumstantial but provocative. Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey is a megalithic site dated to around 9600 BC, and the exact date Plato gives for the destruction of Atlantis. Its massive stone pillars, carved with intricate reliefs of animals and symbols, were erected by people who supposedly had no agriculture, no cities, no complex social organization. And yet, the site required planning, labor, and expertise far beyond what we traditionally attribute to hunter-gatherers. In Egypt, the Great Sphinx bears signs of water erosion that could only have occurred during a period of heavy rainfall, which ended in the region around 7000 BCE, thousands of years before the Sphinx was supposedly carved. Could the Sphinx be far older than we think? Could it be a remnant of a pre-dynastic culture predating the pharaohs? At Baalbek in Lebanon, the Temple of Jupiter rests on a foundation of megalithic stones, some weighing over 800 tons. These stones were quarried, transported, and placed with precision that challenges modern engineering. Who built them? When? And how? These are not proof of Atlantis, but they are reminders that the past is deeper and stranger than our textbooks admit. They suggest that the story of human civilization is not a smooth progression from simplicity to complexity, but a series of rises and falls, of forgotten peaks and dark ages, of knowledge gained and lost. Perhaps Atlantis is not a place, but a metaphor for this forgotten knowledge, symbol of the idea that we are not the first to reach for greatness, and that the ruins we find beneath the waves and the sands are echoes of a story we have yet to fully understand. Pause now in the silence of ruins. There is something deeply human about building monuments. We carve our names into stone, not because we believe it will last forever, but because we need to believe it might. We build pyramids and temples, statues and cities, knowing that time will wear them down, that earthquakes will topple them, that the sea will swallow them. And yet, we build. Why? Perhaps it is because we are aware, in a way that other animals are not, of our own mortality. We know that we will die, that our memories will fade, that the world will go on without us. And so we create hoping that some part of us will endure, that future generations will look upon our works and remember. But time is patient. The pyramids stand for now, but even they are crumbling. The Great Wall erodes. The Parthenon crumbles. And beneath the waves, entire cities lie forgotten, their names lost, their stories erased. Atlantis is a monument to this awareness. It is a story about the futility of human ambition and the inevitability of loss. It is a reminder that no empire is eternal, no civilization invincible. The sea is always waiting. The earth is always shifting. And in the end, all that we build will be reclaimed by the elements. And yet the story endures. For over 2,000 years, we have told the tale of Atlantis, not because we believe it was real, but because it speaks to something true. It speaks to the fragility of our world and to the stubborn, irrational hope that even in ruins, even under the waves, something of us will remain. This is the Song of the Stone, a melody of loss and memory, sung across the ages, from one civilization to the next. It is a song we are still singing. And as the seas rise again, as the climate shifts, as our own cities face the prospect of flood and fire, we are learning that the song has never been more relevant. Before we return to the surface, there is one more thread to follow, a thread that leads not into the depths, but upward into the sky. Throughout history, certain cultures have linked their myths to the stars. The ancient Egyptians aligned the pyramids with the constellation Orion, believing it to be the resting place of Osiris. The Maya built their temples to track the movements of Venus and the Pleiades. And some researchers have suggested that Atlantis, too, had a celestial dimension. In esoteric traditions, theosophy, Hermeticism, New Age philosophy, Atlantis is described not just as a physical place, but as a state of consciousness. The Atlanteans, according to these teachings, were spiritually advanced beings, possessing psychic abilities and esoteric knowledge. Their downfall came not only from moral corruption, but from the misuse of this knowledge, technology, and mysticism wielded without wisdom. These interpretations are speculative, unverifiable, and often dismissed by mainstream scholars. But they reflect a deeper impulse to see Atlantis not as a historical puzzle, but as a symbolic narrative about the human condition, about power and responsibility, about the dangers of hubris, about the tension between progress and restraint. Some have pointed to astronomical alignments in ancient texts, suggesting that the date of Atlantis' destruction 9600 BCE coincides with the end of the age of Leo and the beginning of the age of Cancer, marked by the precession of the equinoxes. Whether this has any historical significance is debatable, but it underscores the way Atlantis has been woven into larger cosmological narratives. In the end, Atlantis becomes what we need it to be: a lost city, a moral parable, a conspiracy theory, a symbol of fallen greatness, a warning, a dream. It is all of these, and none of them. It is a mirror, reflecting our fears and hopes, our curiosity and our longing. And perhaps that is why it endures. The past is not as distant as we think. The forces that shaped it, rising seas, shifting climates, collapsing ice, are at work again. Today, global sea levels are rising at an accelerating pace, driven by the melting of glaciers in Greenland and Antarctica, and by the thermal expansion of warming oceans. Coastal cities, Miami, Venice, Jakarta, Shanghai face the prospect of inundation within this century. Island nations, like the Maldives and Tuvalu, are already planning for displacement. The maps of the world are changing, just as they did 12,000 years ago. History, it seems, moves in cycles. The cities we build today may become the Atlantises of tomorrow, ruins submerged, stories half remembered, mysteries for future archaeologists to ponder. And perhaps this is the final lesson in Atlantis. Not that it was real or imaginary, ancient or allegorical, but that it is a warning. A reminder that civilization is fragile, that the earth is powerful, and that the sea is patient. We are not immune to the forces that drowned Doggerland, that buried Thonis Heracleion, that submerged Sunderland. We are, in fact, accelerating them. And as we do, the story of Atlantis takes on a new urgency, not as a tale of the past, but as a prophecy of the future. The return of the sea is not a myth. It is happening now. And the question is not whether we will face it, but how we will respond. Will we remember the lessons of the past? Will we adapt, retreat, rebuild? Or will we, like the mythical Atlanteans, ignore the warnings until it is too late? The ocean is rising. The ice is melting. And somewhere, beneath the waves, the lost cities are waiting to remind us that nothing lasts forever. The diver ascends slowly, reluctantly, leaving the ruins behind. The surface grows closer, a shimmer of silver light, the boundary between two worlds. And then, with a rush of bubbles, the diver breaks through, gasping, back into the air. The ocean remains below, vast and silent, holding its secrets close. Did Atlantis exist? Was it Santorini, or Doggerland, or Dwarka? Was it Sunderland, or a comet's cataclysm, or a moral fable spun by Plato to teach a lesson? The answer, perhaps, is both simpler and more complex than we imagine. Atlantis is not one thing. It is all things. It is every city the sea has claimed, every shore the ice has buried, every memory of a world that was. It is the echo of Doggerland in the North Sea. It is the temples of Thonis Heracleion, rising ghost-like from the silt. It is the Yonaguni monument, debated and enigmatic. It is the drowned valleys of Sunderland, and the ruins off the coast of Dwarka, and the possibility remote, but tantalizing that somewhere, still undiscovered, lies a place that inspired the legend. But more than any of this, Atlantis is a question. It is the question we ask when we look out at the ocean and wonder what lies beneath. It is the question we ask when we uncover an artifact, a ruin, a fossil, and realize how much of the past we do not know. It is the question we ask when we confront our own impermanence, our own fragility, our own hubris. What will we leave behind? What will be remembered? And when the seas rise again, as they have risen before, what will future generations say of us? The silence beneath holds no answers. It holds only the past layered, fragmented, waiting. And as long as we continue to search, to dive, to question, the mystery of Atlantis will endure, not because it was real, but because it reminds us to look deeper, to remember, and to imagine.